Right. So this will be my last session as a host. So I will introduce Warner to share his app building experience with dotnet. So hello, Warner. How is it going?
Hey, Justin. Great, thanks.
Yeah,
How are
it
you?
sounds really, I'm really great. Thank you for asking. So it sounds really
Awesome.
great to hear your story. So whenever you are ready, it's all yours. So do you have
Yeah,
any slide for sharing?
100%. I have a fully packed slide deck for our audience today, and I'm really excited to be sharing that with everybody.
Sure. So that's all yours.
Thanks, Justin. Welcome, everybody, back to .NET Conference. It's so cool. I've been learning so much from the sessions and just seeing how many smart people there are out there. Our session today is how a bunch of amateur developers and infrastructure folks built a $1 million application. My colleague, Chris Sugdinas, unfortunately, due to a medical emergency, couldn't join today, but I'm more than happy to take you through our journey on this adventure with .NET. We all get these crazy thoughts sometimes about, I don't have the right skills to complete something. I think there's a lot of stuff going on about, am I a phony, or do I really know what I'm doing? Is the application the right thing? Whenever we're met with some type of blocker or conflict. So there's a lot of stuff. All these thoughts also went through my head before we started this application. And then, as if a light from the heavens, I remembered Scott Anselman's session like 10 years ago where he said, just start writing code. Just do it. Just put pen to paper. Just start writing code. Or as I like to call it, build the plane as we fly it. During today's session, our agenda is going to be a small team introduction. We're going to have a look at some PowerShell goodness, some .NET stuff. We're also going to have a view at some of the challenges and learnings this team had along the way when we were building this. And then at the end, a quick conclusion. To introduce the team, we are a big team. Most of us work for Microsoft. We were out of regions like the US, out of Canada, Germany, India, South Africa, where I'm from, and it was really a crazy journey. Most of us are cloud solution architects. In the past, we used to be called premier field engineers. So we focus on training people, upskilling our customers, helping them every day work better in the cloud. As you can imagine, you might think that because we work at Microsoft, we have access to all these amazing people that can just write applications for us. And that's true to an extent. But this team, we had to write most of this ourselves. There were a bunch of other team members that joined and left the team on various times. But for this solution in time, these were our team members. To give you a little bit of the history on this team, Microsoft has a bunch of teams internally that create intellectual property, and this intellectual property can be in the form of slides. It can be in the form of workshops. It can even be in the form of reporting solutions. And then these deliveries all get bundled up and offered to our customers to help them better work with their Microsoft technologies. This architect team that we're a part of, we don't even work for the same boss. We're spread all over the world, and we all, like I mentioned, work proactively with our customers. We're that person that sits on the side and help somebody click through all the clicks you have to do in Azure to deploy a virtual machine. But we can also go as extreme as going infrastructure as code, working with repositories, putting source code in places, and writing applications. To give you a little bit of a background on the skills and technologies that we are all focused on, a lot of us came from a System Center Configuration Manager background, or SCCM, as I'm going to call it in the rest of this presentation. We had some Intune skills. There were some Windows folks. Most of us understood PowerShell fairly well. We got some SQL people, and then we also have folks that focus on Power BI. One thing to highlight for this project is that this was not part of our day jobs. This is something that we did on the side as a stretch goal to create some more impact for our customers. And as a bunch of CSAs that are like-minded people, we thought it'd be a great idea to work on this solution. There has been a previous solution similarly to this, created for SCCM, and that was delivered at a bunch of customers. So we knew that there was a need for this type of reporting. And we wanted to write this in .NET. As with all applications that you might think of, there has to be some type of opportunity or need in the environment or out there for you to start working on it. So our customer state normally was infrastructure folks, security folks that had to patch servers and patch Windows machines. This made it really interesting for us to work on because we love making sure our customers run in the most secure way and trust the cloud, trust the updates that are getting released. And we wanted to also take that and showcase it to the leaders of these organizations. Because the folks that do the patching or the folks that write the code might not always be the business people that need to see the reporting. Some of the reporting that we had issues with was also that our historical data, because of the amounts of data that we were pulling, there was no way to store that easily. And when we did store it easily, it took really long to open up on certain solutions. Some of the challenges our customers also faced is that the built-in reporting tends to, you had to have a really good skills at building SSRS reports, SQL reports, and we found that a lot of people either don't have the time or they don't have the capacity to learn these skills to get the actual data out that they need. One of our final objectives was to make sure that this works for any industry, and it needed to be one template that could work all over the world. We also wanted to make it easier for the security teams to have a look at these vulnerabilities or CVEs, as you might have heard in the environment on the internet. So where did we look for this? So we decided to go with the Microsoft Graph Security APIs. Now, just remember, we're a bunch of infrastructure people, and you are telling us to call APIs. So right there and then, it was a learning journey for all of us, and we really had to understand how these Defender for Endpoint APIs, if I call them, what data do I get back? Do I only call 100,000 rows? Do I call all the data? How does this even work? So we had to read up a lot on the Defender APIs, and we decided to focus right on the left here, threat and vulnerability management, because we realized that would be the one place where we could get all the data that we needed for our application. So .NET, why .NET? We wanted to easily wrap our existing tools and our existing code while still allowing us some room for growth, because maybe in the future we want to run it in a web app, maybe we want to run it on a mobile device, and we just realized that .NET is just the best place for us to write this. Our previous installer was written in .NET 4.5, somewhere around about there, and we were also all used to using Visual Studio, whether it was Visual Studio Code or even 2019 or in 2022. Now, the final reason, as with, I would imagine a lot of people, when you have some spare time, you're going to try and create something new. So I had about 2 weeks in December in 2022, and I was working with one of my colleagues that you saw in one of the previous slides, John Ellis, and we were just smashing it out together with Chris and just writing code, and doing, so many builds and so many tests. Now, what are some of the challenges that we actually realized as we started working on this? Well, some of the hurdles we faced was that everybody sits in a different time zone. I'm about sometimes between 7 to 9 hours ahead of the US, which means by the time I'm done writing code and I close my laptop, everybody else still comes online. That was one of the challenges we had to navigate. We used Azure DevOps with work items to make sure that we have an agile approach to this development environment. And as you can imagine, with people that work in infrastructure all the time, you wouldn't imagine them having to go into agile technologies, having to try and track all their work items. We normally just get requests, deal with them, and move on with our lives. The other skill we needed to develop was understanding if PowerShell could be integrated into C#. And of course, we knew in the background it runs off the same DLLs and stuff, but we didn't really understand 100%, okay, how do we call something? What do I need to do? Or at least I didn't. Sometimes the tools and processes and scripts that your team uses might not always be the best for everybody. And we had to make peace with that. We had to make sure that we could do something that would be the best for the entire team, because that way we would be the most productive at getting this application out there. And of course, as with every application, testing. I think I did between 10 and 20 builds every day of those 2 to 3 weeks that we were testing this application. There were always something coming up out of the woodwork that we needed to work on, as you can see with our little wooden plane that we have flying right here. Once we were done that December, we still needed to fly the plane at some of our customers and build it. We would run into scalability issues. We would run into a lot of stuff that we needed to fix. And we always just kept track on that through our work items and our knowledge base, just researching internally, speaking to a lot of people that have way more experience than we have in this. Let's take a look at some of the scripts. We chose PowerShell because a lot of the team members already understand PowerShell. We've worked with it with SQL. We've worked with it with ACCM. We've worked with it with AD and Windows. So using PowerShell was just natural for us. And we also love using PowerShell to deploy templates into Azure. Now, we needed a lot of infrastructure for this solution. And I'm going to show that to you on our architecture slide. So we decided to go with a good old deploy.ps1 file. That'll call our ARM template and start deploying the solution. The rest of the scripts that you see on the slide was all scripts that we used to call the APIs from Defender. And those scripts would sit in an Azure automation account. That would make it really easy for us to schedule the tasks and ensure we could look at the errors, and it could run autonomously on its own in the background. We didn't have to touch anything. Let's take a look at this installer or this application that we've made. This is it. So for everybody that was expecting a very massive, super cool application with lots of buttons, that is not it. We are literally using it to install, to build our architecture, to deploy our solutions, and to make our lives easier. Let's take a look quickly at how this installer works and how this Windows form reacts. I've opened it up here in Visual Studio 2022, and our solution is called MDAD, which stands for Microsoft Defender Advanced Dashboards. If I double click on the button install, you can see it takes me to the private void, and here is where I'm just creating a directory. I need a directory to pull out all of my resources that I have in my resource designer. I then write all those files that live in the resource manager. I write that all to files in the current directory. And as you can see, these are some of the resources that I'm pulling in there. I've got a bunch of Power BI files. This is one of our test builds, so I wanted to bring the best that we have to .NET Conference. So there is a lot of work in progress here, but you can see there's our PowerShell scripts, there's our Power BI files, and if we scroll into our resource designer, we can also have a look and see what else is there. So we used the resource designer. We added our resources in here, our scripts, our SQL scripts, our Power BI dashboards. And I don't know if this is always the best way to do it, but this is the way we realized how to do it. So you can remove a resource here, you can add a resource here. Sometimes when editing these resources, we ran into an issue where if we didn't commit it properly and we try to do a publish, that these files wouldn't be up to date. So if any of you know how to fix that, drop us a message. We did eventually figure out how to get past that. Once all these files are extracted, I need to execute PowerShell to call those files. So it just calls the PowerShell files that I have. And we decided to build it like this just because it's the easiest way for us to do it. The second button is the button that is close or cancel. And when you click that, it just does a nice cleanup for us of our current installer. Let's do a quick debug and let's do a run and see if it opens up. And there is our installer. everything nicely packaged in about 100 megs, and so really small to download at our customers, really easy to use. The code samples that I would like to highlight for everybody on the call, if you're interested in doing something like this, calling PowerShell from somewhere else, there were very few articles that I could find that would really show us how to do this. So the top left was the section we used. We created a directory called repo, a subdirectory in there. We pulled out all of the files, and in the next section of code that you could see at the bottom, we called PowerShell with execution policy bypass. You can also make it a trusted file and make sure that it is a trusted installer, but for us, we just needed the bypass. And then we just call a new process and start up PowerShell and tell it, hey, please run everything that you see in these scripts and these paths. Moving on to the architecture to show you what it looks like in Azure. So on the right-hand side, we have the Defender API sitting out there in the Microsoft cloud somewhere. And at the bottom left, we have Power BI, which is the solution we love to visualize and show value that we get out of our data. On the far left, so then in order, how does all of this work? The heart of this is our automation account that you can see in the middle of the screen right here. Our Azure automation account contains all of our scripts and our runbooks, as well as our credentials and variables, and it stores it all securely and safely for us, hidden so that we don't have to expose any private information. That automation then uses an Azure AD service principal, which we will eventually evolve into a managed identity. And that allows us to automatically call the Defender APIs with our PowerShell scripts at any time of the day on a schedule, and that'll allow us to download that data from MDE. We then take that and we put those gzip files into, extract them, make them into usable JSON data files, put them into SQL, and show that on Power BI. And that was the entire thought of this. It took us about a year to get to the decision to, first of all, we always knew we wanted to write an MDE dashboard. And then we also looked at the security MDE portal at that time. And even though it was great, up and coming, we were really excited, there were still some features that we wanted to see. So we realized there is still a gap in the market for us to create one dashboard that can be used everywhere. Let's take a look at the actual installer, a published and built installer, what it would look like at a customer. Now, as mentioned, we're not pro developers at all. We are doing this build just to show you what we've done and that it's possible for anybody to write an application. I'm just going to sign in real quick. It does launch a PowerShell immediately, and you can see all the files are extracted on the left-hand side there. Ken, one of our colleagues, was really good at writing all these things into NuGet packages so that we use the most supported version of the PowerShell scripts that we're calling and the modules that we need to communicate with Azure. Now, one thing that I always like to do is I like to launch my Edge and just sign in there first before authenticating any of these device code authentications. So there I am, signed into my Azure environment, and I will just minimize this real quick, grab the device login. And there's multiple ways to auth. You don't have to use device login, but for us, this was just the easiest and best way at a customer to call this. You don't want to store anything locally on somebody's machine or try and create a variable. Once authenticated, sorry, it's quite blurry for security purposes, but you can see on the left-hand side, 1, 2, and 3, those are my 3 subscriptions that I have access to, and it will now create a resource group for us. So I'm just sitting back at this point. There's a resource group. It's called MDAD 2307. That's our most recent release. And you can see under the deployments blade in Azure, if I click on that, we can look at the deployment. So if you've done this before in the past, it's really neat. I love coming in here and watching my services deploy while I'm waiting for the script to run. Putting them side by side, we can keep an eye. We can see that it's busy creating the SQL database for us. And this is really what I love to do. I love creating things that build massive architectures in Azure. Cool. Our deployment is complete. Now, even though the Azure infrastructure is there, we still need to configure some of it, and that is pulling in our runbooks. Now, this can take some time, so we're waiting for our runbooks to import, and these runbooks are importing into the automation account, which will be my automatic script running solution. You can see my one script is already in there, and while I'm waiting, I'm just going to play a little bit of Edge Surf. So here we go. If you've never tried this before, Edge Surf, it's my go-to game. I got a little Matthew McConaughey character here, surfing, dodging some people, and dodging another surfer. Let's see if we can find a jump. What's this? Oh, yeah, here we go. Cool little jump with a trick. And it all comes to stop with a rock. At least I beat 51% of players worldwide at that moment. As we can see, a lot of my other scripts are also importing. And you can see there's some work being done in the automation account. And now all of my runbooks are in there, and I am ready for the solution to work. Now, just to make 100% sure, I'm just going to have a look at my SQL database, and I can click the Query Editor button on the left to help me test my SQL database and log in. I don't need SQL Server Management Studio installed. I don't need Azure Data Studio, even though those are amazing tools and we love them. I can test in Azure immediately if my SQL database is working. With all my solutions installed, I can clean up. You can see there's a setup file for me to view it and a Power BI file for me to see and use in the solution. Now, if there's any Pokemon fans out there, I've recently purchased Pokemon Scarlet, and I've been playing it on my Nintendo Switch, so it's been a really fun adventure, and I like to apply that in my daily work. So for all the Pokemon fans out there, have a look at our solution. It's evolved. It's finally production ready. We can use this at our customers. So MDE, our first name for our solution. This is internal. This isn't MDE outside. We called it MDAD. It evolved. It has new functionality capabilities. We finally can use this to provide value to our customers. So what value am I talking about? Well, let's have a look at the Power BI dashboard. On the very left-hand side, we have all of your history and N-2. So all of the history up until 2 months ago, your compliance and vulnerability status of your Windows machines in your environment. In the middle, we have last month, which in this case was March. I'll show you a more updated dashboard in the next demo. And then current month is April. Now, we've added a bunch of cool features in here in the report saying end of support OS, compliant, and we've also made this dashboard as visually inclusive as possible for folks that have eye impairments or color blindness. We also added a quick search to it because we know sometimes we need to find things quickly and we don't have time to go through an entire database. So the quick search will help us find those CVEs, those devices, or even the vendors that is causing a vulnerability in my environment. And as with all customers, we need to make room for exceptions. There might be some exceptions where customers say, but we don't patch Mac OS, or we don't do the CVE, or we want to wait before this patch gets released. So we have included an exception section for the dashboard. Now let's take a look at this in action. And here it is. Here I have my vulnerability management dashboard. Even though the name internally can change, the solution is still 100% the same. We can drop down under tags, operating systems, device groups. And as you can see, this is much more up to date, a much more recent dashboard. I can even drill through on the reports. So let's take a look at this one vulnerable device. This is VM30. It's running Windows 10. And it's onboarded into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. But my OpenSSL is showing that there are a bunch of CVEs that if I do not patch OpenSSL on this Windows box, I'm going to be in serious trouble. We can also go back on the dashboard and look at that super cool search that I was talking about. So the super cool search, we can use search for devices, CVEs, high, low, medium priority severities, and even if the exploit is verified in the wild. That means that it can be exploited, or if there is no known exploit at this moment. And that is the dashboard that we provide to our customers. What are some of the stuff that we learned, some of the takeaways for us? The first time we learned this was with the previous solution. You can create amazing applications, but if nobody knows about it, then you'll have such a small scale of users. So for us, we realized from the get-go, we need to get the word out there that we have created the solution. So we set up demos with customers, demos with account managers, showcases, learning and upskilling, word of mouth. We used a blog that I will attach at the end of the slide deck. We used internal videos and upskilling for people, 5-minute calls, 30-minute calls, 1-hour calls. We tried to get the word out everywhere that this application is ready and it can be used on our customers. We love saying that you cannot fix what you don't measure. So we needed to make sure that we report on how much effort we are doing. How many hours are we spending? What are we doing to get everybody involved in this? We showed that to our managers, their managers, to other people that work on these type of IP solutions. Our ease of use, such an insane thing that we need to remember. You might go out today and learn the most incredible technology, learn about the most incredible technology and how to use it. But if that doesn't work for your team, it is always going to be a blocker for you. So the best tech for you might not always be the best tech for your entire team. So always be inclusive in that area and understand that you need to use the right tool for the job at the right time. That idea that you have, that you've stored in the back of your head, that you've never written an application for, revisit that idea. I like thinking that my best ideas come to me in the shower in the morning. I'm standing there thinking about nothing, and then boom, suddenly an idea pops into my head, and I'm like, oh, I should totally make that code change. Or whatever your your shower version of idea is, go do that. If it's a coffee shop, if it's at the ocean, whatever you like. And then fail hard and fail fast. We're talking about agile these days. Everything needs to be agile. And agile sometimes can be a word that people abuse. It means I can just give you prerequisites every day. That's why scoping is important. So let's make sure that when we fail, we recognize it. But that doesn't make you a failure. Just because you failed in the past doesn't mean that you can't succeed in the future. Or like Chris likes to say, it's all part of the game. What about the money? I thought this session was about making money. Well, Microsoft has a way of tracking the deliveries that we do. To give you an idea how we use this, we take this application, we packaged it, we said to people, we'll do a delivery plus 1 or 2 CSAs that comes to your offices or even help you remotely. We deliver the solution, we show you how to use it, and at the end, we help you with some Power BI knowledge sharing. So it isn't just a install and forget. It's an install where we help you also understand. Now, I know this is about .NET and not about the, this delivery. So just a quick overview. In the first year, this is that year, we have run 69 deliveries. These are booked deliveries. So you can see December obviously has a number, even though we're not there yet. These are booked in advance and paid for in advance. So with our first year of delivery, when we launched it in January, we were still flying and building the plane as we fly it. We had so this entire year, we've had over 69 deliveries. And even though I can't give you the exact precise number, we generated far over $1 million for Microsoft. But as you can see with this current slide, this is the #1 thing I say to people when they ask, oh, you work for Microsoft, do you write code? Then I say, no, I'm not yet a developer. And I've always felt so weird, like I'm out of place with the infra people, but I'm also out of place with the developer folks. So if you take a look at this real quick, I created my very first application in university in Visual Studio 2009. None of the logic worked, and I failed the class. And I dropped out of university. So if it wasn't for my wonderful mother that put me in a college where I could do A+, N+, and Microsoft certifications, my IT career would have been over right there. That being said, in 2013, I learned how to write batch files, PowerShell, and created a solution that had to be attached to every support ticket. Fast forward, I've had loads of failures in my life, but I never gave up. And I think it's almost time to see that I've been writing applications for the last 12 years to take that title away and say, yes, I will embrace being a developer. I also asked my colleague Chris to make one, and this is just to show you that not everybody's path is the same. Chris started in IT when I was born, right? 20 years before I wrote my first application, Chris wrote his application. So meet up with those people that have views and experience and build on the shoulders of giants. Chris went on to, he didn't even know what a batch file was in 1992, and he still evolved, had a growth mindset to, in 2022, help write this application delivery that you saw today. So what do I have to give to you today? I want to say, go build your plane. Go start building your plane today. You don't have to be a pro dev. If you're starting out with development, if you're an infrastructure person, if you feel like you have all these skills but you need something new, just go for it. Start every day writing a little one-liner code. The other thing is, if it's not fun, try something else. Recently, my wife left an industry that she worked in for very long, and I said to her, quit. And she waited and she waited. And I said to her again, quit. Don't do it if you don't love it. Eventually, she did. And now she's a small business owner that helps animals all over the country. It just shows you, if you take a chance and educated risk, then good things could happen. The last two tips I have for you: you never waste money on education. I learned about .NET during COVID, relearned about .NET during COVID, and I've learned about DevOps for the first time during COVID in 2020. What is DevOps? How do I use Git repos? What are pipelines? And after all of that, I didn't use those skills immediately. But this year in 2023, I've delivered 3 GitHub and DevOps workshops to massive customers. So you'll never waste money on education. Take that step, write that certification. And then very lastly, some optimism there. If you have the right tools, the right team, and the passion, even amateurs can achieve greatness. Thank you very much for listening to my session today. Please remember to download .NET 8. I'm going to upgrade our app to .NET 8 immediately. And the vulnerability management dashboard, if you're keen to see what it's all about, there is a link in the article. It's on the Tech Community Microsoft website. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day.
Can you hear me now?
Fantastic. Wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much. I think your session is very interesting. I have one question to ask you. The question is, if can you give me some suggestion to the startup, because many startup love this session. They want to some guideline with your topic. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Startups are some of my favorite customers because you get to build using the most amazing tools today. This wasn't built using any AI tools. This was built by old school manual labor. So if you are a developer in 2023 and you're using Copilot, your speed will, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I wouldn't see that you'd probably write 10 times faster. I've been using Copilot now after this solution. So my top tips, if you're a startup, 1, learn the major clouds and what their infrastructure offerings give to you, because you might love the SaaS solutions on Azure, and that's so much better than having to patch your servers. 2, use things like Copilot and all the amazing tools that there are. And 3, watch the .NET sessions on Microsoft Learn. There's so much good content created by Scott and a bunch of other amazing people that'll just inspire you to write .NET.
Okay, thank you your share. Maybe see you next time. Thank you very much, Werner.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye bye.